There is no red, white, or blue in this country. The only color that matters is green, because we live in the United Corporations of America.
Hello and welcome. I am Zeynab Day and I will be hosting today. I'll be covering for Jordan Sheridan. Jordan is out and he will be out a few times this week because he is working on hiring a new full-time on-the-ground journalist for Status Coup. We have grown from 300,000 subscribers to almost 500,000 subscribers now. So our channel is growing within the last year. We have been doing a tremendous amount of work on the ground, but we need more help and we need more boots on the ground to help get the coverage of everything insane that's going on in this country right now, from local disasters to what our administration is doing, to all the rallies, the protests, the strikes that are happening across the country. So that's what Jordan's hard at work doing today. And I will be hosting the show. So it's so great to see everyone again. And man, we have some crazy things to cover today. First off, we'll be covering what I'd like to call our xenophobic St. Patty's Day White House celebration, I guess you could call it. Trump has defied court orders regarding migrants being detained and sent to El Salvador prisons. A judge order had decried that he cannot, in fact, deport in this manner. However, we'll be getting into what Trump's statements are, what was coming from the press briefing yesterday, as well as the latest developments. Right now, Trump's administration is in court regarding this court order. So there may be breaking news during this live stream as well regarding that. But as far as it stands, there's no new news that has come out immediately regarding this. But we are anticipating potentially some coming out during the show. So please stay tuned. But we'll get you guys all caught up on what has happened thus far leading up to this latest court hearing. Also, we'll be covering college campus arrest, because there have been more, which does tie into what is going on with the migrant deportation, what is going on with the silencing of protesters, what is going on with essentially the overwhelming theme is a lack of due process and a lack of First Amendment rights. And those combined, whisking people away without due process, is a trend, and it's happening in more areas than one. So we'll be talking about that as well and giving some updates on that. Another thing we'll be talking about today is everyone is pissed off at Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is the new rotating villain. You know, of course, we've had Kristen Sinema, we've had Joe Manchin in the past, but Chuck Schumer, along with 10 other Democrats, voted in favor to pass Joe Biden's spending bill. And since even many mainstream Democrats, even many loyalists to the party are angry, voters are angry, and the response has been overwhelming. Chuck Schumer even canceled his book tour. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today and some of the backlash he's gotten over the weekend. And including that, we'll be talking about the Veterans March on the National Mall that was held this weekend, that was covered by Status Coup journalist and contributor John Farina. We were out there live. We got to hear from a lot of veterans, some great speakers. And so we'll be covering some clips from that event and talking about what some of their concerns were as well. We'll also be talking about attacks on Social Security. Yes, we have more cuts to Social Security, more threats to Social Security. What does that look like? In Seattle, a man was even deemed, quote unquote, dead by Elon's minions, and they cut off his Social Security, and he's very much alive. So we'll be covering a little bit of that today. And last but definitely not least, we'll be talking about last night, Saturday and Sunday. Trump sent tons of bombs to Yemen to quote unquote attack Yemenis Houthis once he declared the Houthis as a terrorist organization, and are now stoking and inflaming a potential war with Iran, with Trump making a statement today on Truth Social, which of course, you know, it's wonderful to hear declarations of essentially war on Truth Social, but that's what happened. So we'll get a little bit of an update on what is happening in Yemen, and kind of going over what Trump's statements have been, as well as a slight overview of what happened today at the Pentagon press briefing, which was short, just ended right before this show. So we'll be talking about what they covered in that press briefing as well. So let's get to it, you guys. Let's talk about it first. Trump defying court orders. Can we go ahead and pull that article up? The well, actually, I think it's the
I'm not seeing.
oh, the tweet from Hugo Lowell.
Oh, okay.
So new, and this is from a journalist, Hugo Lowell. New Chief U.S. Judge James Bosenberg denies the Trump administration's request to cancel today's 5 p.m. Eastern hearing on whether it violated his court order temporarily blocking deportations of suspected Venezuelan gang members. So what has happened is the Trump administration is claiming that migrants, the judge order from sorry, just one moment. I missed his name here. The judge order from U.S. District Judge James Bosenberg has claimed that Trump cannot deport individuals from the United States to El Salvador without due process. He wants a list of the names of who was deported, and has also requested a list of whatever their crimes are, their charges against them are. What Trump's administration is claiming is that they were already over national waters, so they're essentially immune to the judge's ruling. He's also claiming that all 228 people that were deported were Trendiagra members, so members of what he's now deemed as a South American terrorist organization. But there's no way to really know if these individuals are in fact members of that gang. There's no way to know if they're members of the criminal gang. In fact, there were claims of that last month of individuals from Trendiagra being deported to Guantanamo. However, when journalists went to Guantanamo and were able to interview some of these migrants, as well as members from the ACLU and other organizations, it was discovered that some of these migrants didn't even have a criminal record. Some were awaiting refugee status. The problem with what is happening right now is there are zero checks and balances. There is no oversight of this. There is zero due process. So essentially, anyone can be swept up, anyone can be whisked away, and anyone can be taken to Guantanamo or to El Salvador. And El Salvador's president, Bukele, has been known, and this prison is known for torture. The prison they are being sent to is known to torture individuals, and these individuals are being sent there. And from what we have heard from Marco Rubio last month, was Bukele had agreed to jail members of this group on behalf of the U.S. in a meeting last month. He said that these deportees were custody of the Central American country's Center for Confinement of Terrorism, CECOT. They could be held for an entire year, or that period could be extended. So the argument is they're getting shipped over there. Now it's in the hands of Venezuela. Now it's in the hands of CECOT, but there is no oversight to who we're even sending over there. We could be sending U.S. citizens for all we know. We could be sending people that are have no criminal record. We could be sending people that are applying for refugee and have legally applied for refugee status. We could be sending people over there who have escaped or are attempting to escape from the gang violence. Let's do a little clip here from Caroline Leavitt's press conference yesterday regarding this. If you could play the first clip for us, Colin. The one about judges and transparency.
You said the clip or the?
Yes, please. Oh, the clip from Caroline Leavitt's press conference from the White House
President Trump
press
signed
briefing.
a proclamation invoking the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by the foreign terrorist organization Tren de Aragua. At the president's direction, the Department of Homeland Security carried out a counter-terrorism operation deporting nearly 200 violent Tren de Aragua terrorists, which will save countless American lives. Thanks to the great work of the Department of State, these heinous monsters were extracted and removed to El Salvador, where they will no longer be able to pose any threats to the American public. Tren de Aragua is one of the most ruthless terrorist gangs in the world, and they are responsible for some of the most heinous crimes that have occurred in our nation's history in recent years, including the savage murders of beautiful Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray. President Trump promised Laken and Jocelyn's families during his campaign that he would demand justice for their beautiful girls, and that's exactly what he did. As the president acknowledged during his inaugural address on January 20th, he pledged to invoke this act, and he has no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions. President Trump will continue his historic efforts to seal the border and prevent these illegal invaders from coming here in the first place.
All right. So to unpack that a little bit, it's important to understand what the 1798 Alien Enemy Act was. It's only been used 3 times in American history. And as I said, it's from 1798, so just shortly after the founding of the country. It was used in the War of 1812, in World War I, and again in World War II. And at the time it was used in World War II is actually a stain on the American culture, because it was in the American government, because it was used to intern the Japanese and Japanese citizens during the war, during World War II. Trump's administration is claiming that this is an act of wartime because he's claimed that we're under invasion of illegal aliens. Now, whether or not you feel like people should be, whether or not you feel like the border should be tightened, security should be tightened, understand that this is a step much further than that. This is a step removing people without any due process. And we saw what happened when rendition was used in the early 2000s under the Department of Homeland Security in order to remove people and take them to Guantanamo Bay. We saw the horrors of Guantanamo Bay. We saw the torture. We saw that people were held there 5, 6, 7, 10 years without due process. And that has still been going on. We cannot do this at a mass scale. And Caroline Leavitt is claiming that since Trump won, that there is a mandate for mass deportations. And right now, Bukele's government is getting paid $6 million. The El Salvadorian government is getting paid $6 million to house these migrants. Trump is claiming that it's cheaper because of our privatized prison system. which charges an average of $625 a day. So instead of deprivatizing our prison system, which Obama privatized, and this is Obama's fault in part, but instead of fixing that problem, and instead of bringing on more judges in order to process people and making this process cheaper and cheaper for the American people, his solution is, let's just send them to El Salvador. Can we play that clip now about the $6 million going to Venezuela?
And just to follow up on that, this will be challenged later today in the courts. Does the president, does this allow him to defy the court order without having this the checks and balances and the separation of power? No. In fact, this administration acted within the confines of the law, again, within the president's constitutional authority and under the authority granted to him under the Alien Enemies Act. We are quite confident in that, and we are wholly confident that we are going to win this case in court. Peter.
Thank you, Caroline. If you guys can't send 200 Tren de Aragua terrorists at a time to El Salvador, where are you going to send them instead?
It's a very good question. You'd have to ask the courts and the people on the left who are trying to fight this administration for doing the business that this president sought out to do, which is to deport these foreign terrorists. And we're very grateful to President Bukele and to El Salvador for accepting these heinous monsters where they will face justice.
And if these guys are terrorists at war with the United States, is President Trump considering anything more lethal to address them than just sticking them on a plane somewhere else?
Well, it sounded like you had a little bit of curiosity in the premise of your question, so I want to address it. These are designated foreign terrorists. The president signed a proclamation on February 20th, 2025, designating TDA as a foreign terrorist organization that was in consultation with the Attorney General and the Secretary of Treasury. That was pursuant to 8 U.S. Code 1189. The president has the right to do that. And I think nobody would argue that Tren de Aragua should be designated a foreign terrorist organization. If you want to have that argument, I'm happy to do it. These are heinous monsters, rapists, murderers, kidnappers, sexual assaulters, predators who have no right to be in this country, and they must be held accountable.
So she is claiming, and I am curious what the hell that journalist means by more lethal means just killing people. Like what kind of question is that? Also, she is claiming that these are definitely murderers. These are, gang members. These people have done heinous crimes. She's claiming that they're connected to other murders that have already been. If they're connected to murders in the United States, why are they not being processed and charged within the United States for those murders, which is what happens? There are already laws against that. And how do they know? How do they know? And that's a really good question, and one that I think that we have one more clip that kind of shows how they know, and it's startling. It's basically a trust me bro politics. If you could play that last clip for us there, Colin.
We've already provided the breakdown in the effort of transparency about the 261 illegal aliens who were deported. 137 of those were deported under the Alien Enemies Act. 101 of those were Venezuelans removed via Title VIII, which, as you know, are just regular immigration proceedings. And 23 of them were MS-13 Salvadorian gang members. There were also 2 MS-13 ringleaders as part of that group of 23 who President Bukele particularly expressed his gratitude for their return so he can demand justice in his home country. Jennifer.
What criteria, though, other than, say, tattoos or maybe being in the wrong place at the wrong time, are they using to determine that someone is actually a member of one of these organizations?
Intelligence and the men and women on the ground in the interior of our country who are finally being allowed to do their jobs. Their hands were tied under the previous administration, and as I said, they take their jobs very seriously. They should be trusted and respected by the American public with this operation. And of course, as I said to Kelly, the administration will provide all details to the questions that the court poses. Jennifer.
One more follow-up on that. Can you say how much the U.S. is paying El Salvador to imprison these Venezuelans? And then a different question on Russia. I was wondering if you could give us an update on the ceasefire negotiations, and is there anything you can share on the list that Putin passed along to President Trump for the things he's requesting?
Sure. To your first question, it was approximately $6 million to El Salvador for the detention of these foreign terrorists. And I would point out that is pennies on the dollar in comparison to the cost of life and the cost it would impose on the American taxpayer to house these terrorists in maximum security prisons here in the United States of America. And I would echo the message of our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who expressed his gratitude to President Bukele and El Salvador's government for their cooperation in this deal.
So what Caroline Levitt there is pointing out is that it's essentially they are claiming that they will release details to the courts regarding these individuals and that there's transparency. However, there's not been transparency to the press. And since there are no real court case hearings for these individuals because their due process has been skirted, there's no real way to know. So even if you can say that you want to see people taken out of the country who have committed crimes, who have committed violent acts, that could be potentially understandable. However, to say that individuals are not afforded due process, this means that U.S. citizens could get wrapped up into this. This means that anyone can be rounded up, taken out, without us being clear as to who that person is, what is being claimed is done, what is, being claimed to have occurred, and simply banishing them to El Salvador or to Gitmo. And I think that Colin has an update for us. So what's happening? Because that court case just started 22 minutes ago. So
Yeah, we got a little Twitter thread here if you wanted to go over it, but Hugo gave an update of what just happened.
all right, thank you so much, Colin. So Chief Judge James Bosenberg says today's hearing, in fact, finding on government compliance with his temporary restraining order barring deportation of suspected Venezuelan gang members, he's not planning to issue any rulings. DOJ lawyer says he's not at liberty or authorized to discuss any info on how many deportation flights went ahead, says no plans took off after the judge's written orders came down. So they're saying no planes took off after the judge's written order went down, but they're also saying that they're not at liberty or authorized to disclose any information of how many deportations flights went before. And that is something that Caroline Levitt just said, and you guys just heard her say that they would release. And they're apparently not. DOJ says that they will not provide answers about the flight. So she lied in the hearing, or she was just wrong or misinformed. DOJ says they will not provide answers about the flights, when they took off, or how many, even to the judge, on national security grounds. Are the answers classified? Bosenberg asked. DOJ needs to make a showing and to say they won't even tell him. DOJ says it's all irrelevant. They believe they complied with his written order. Bosenberg says he does not think DOJ complied with his order. Bosenberg wants DOJ to provide in writing by noon tomorrow why they can't even tell him. Bosenberg, I think it's Bosenberg actually, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name, tells DOJ, if what you're saying is it's classified and you can't tell me, then you're not going to make a good showing. For example, in the state secrets case of U.S. versus Reynolds, even then you would have to make a showing to me. So it does look like they are refusing to show any documentation as to what these crimes are, who these individuals are, when and where the flights had landed, which are some of the things, these are some of the things that the judge is requesting. And Caroline Leavitt just said, you just heard from her from the press conference saying that they will comply with the judge. They will show him anything that he wants to see. However, the DOJ is apparently not doing what Caroline Leavitt said that they would be doing in this press briefing. And that's very concerning. The trust me bro politics on this. You just heard Caroline Leavitt say, these are good people. They're doing their jobs. They should just be trusted to do their jobs without any question. But that is not how our legal system works for migrants or for US citizens. It is not a matter of the government can do whatever the hell they want to do unless this is unless this is the precedent being set here, that they can do whatever the hell they want to do, zero transparency. And as I said, this precedent had been made before. This is essentially like renditioning people that happened post 9/11. And we saw the disaster of that. And if you guys don't know or don't remember what happened, people were whisked away. Many of those people never had a trial, sometimes stayed in 4, 5, 6 years, later to be found out to have had no connection to any terrorist activity, ripped away from their families, tortured. And now they're taking them off to El Salvador, to a foreign prison without any oversight. And these could be US citizens. This could be your neighbor. This could be teachers at your kid's school. This could be anyone. These may not necessarily be gang members because we don't have any information. We're just trusting ICE. And now let me show you something. And I believe that what I believe all of this is one, it is a way to challenge the court system and to show that Trump is not going to listen to these judges, because Elon Musk and Trump and everyone else has been saying within the administration, there are many people that are saying to impeach judges, to ignore the judges. That seems to be what a lot of folks on the right that are in leadership are calling to do. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is the humanity. Inhumanity is the point. This is to scare migrants from even applying for refugee status, which has overwhelmingly been suspended at this point, and to deter as a deterrence for migrants. Now, that might sound all great and peachy to you, unless they came knocking at your door to drag you off because you said something that they didn't like. So whether you're conservative, whether you're liberal, whether you're a leftist, whatever category you think you are, you're independent, this impacts every single person in the United States when due process is skirted. And trust me, bro, government policies are enacted. Let's play the clip of the White House's tweet from today that they put out. Colin, do you have that one? I wasn't sure if you heard me.
The which one was it?
The one with the song Closing Time.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I know I want to take me home.
So we saw the whole, SMR, whatever video a couple, weeks ago, where they showed the sounds of the chains and the chains rattling, and we're making light of deporting individuals. And today, this video came out with the song Closing Time. And it's deeply concerning because inhumanity is the point. Dehumanization is the point here. And we actually have Caroline Leavitt responded to someone asking her about this video during the press conference, because I do think that their messaging goes in line with disobeying these judges' orders, with skirting due process. All of it fits together, which is why we're talking about what they have to say as well. Can we play that clip too, really quick, Colin?
Thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about this video I saw this morning set to the tune of, I believe, Closing Time, about deportations of illegal migrants. What's the strategy behind the White House's videos they've been putting out on this, and can you kind of talk us through the thinking on these videos?
Sure. I think the White House and our entire government clearly is leaning into the message of this president. And we are unafraid to double down and to take responsibility and ownership of the serious decisions that are being made. The president was elected with an overwhelming mandate to launch the largest mass deportation campaign in American history, and that's exactly what he is doing. And to this very day, we are now, I think, 56 or 7 days into the administration by my count. The president still receives an overwhelming public support for the policies that he is enacting. So we are unafraid to message effectively what the president is doing on a daily basis to make our communities safer. And the specific video you referenced, I think it sums up our immigration policy pretty well. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Oh, it's all jokes. It's all jokes. Suspending due process is hilarious. Let's use the song that all bars close out with. And you see individuals in that clip with tattoos. You see individuals that look a certain way, and that's on purpose. But as you heard her earlier state, what are the benchmarks? What are you using? They are saying investigations, but we don't know what those investigations are. People have been rounded up simply for having a tattoo that they deem to be affiliated loosely with some terrorist organization. These are problems. These are problems because they suspend habeas corpus, they suspend the Fourth Amendment, they suspend due process, and we don't really know what the hell is going on. And we had, and I'm jumping from clip to clip because so many things have happened today that I want to show you guys, but we also had today the guest for, and happy St. Patty's Day to all the folks out there, especially the folks of Irish descent or folks from Ireland, but I'm wearing green today. I am Appalachian, so I have a little bit of that Irish heritage myself. But instead of celebrating our legacy of Irish culture, instead of, looking back at the xenophobia against Irish Americans, where they were treated very much like this in the early 1900s and late 1800s, MMA fighter Conor McGregor, who was found liable for sexual assault in civil court, let's not forget that, was invited to the White House, and he had a few choice words about the quote-unquote immigration problem in Ireland. Let's take a look at that.
Conor is here to meet with the president. He'll be meeting with him later this afternoon. We couldn't think of a better guest to have with us on St. Patrick's Day. We're both wearing our green. This was not planned, but very festive. And as you know, I'll be having a briefing later at 1 o'clock, so we'll talk more about their meeting later. But he's going over to meet with some other administration officials. He's spending the day in Washington, D.C.
For sure.
So
I'm here to raise the issues the people of Ireland face. Yes. And it'll be music to the people of Ireland's ears, because never on the main stage has the issues the people of Ireland face been spoke. Our government has long since abandoned the voices of the people of Ireland, and it's high time that America is made aware of what is going on in Ireland. What is going on in Ireland is a travesty. Our government is the government of zero action with zero accountability. Our money is being spent on overseas issues that has nothing to do with the Irish people. The illegal immigration racket is running ravage on the country. There are rural towns in Ireland that have been overrun in one swoop, that have become a minority in one swoop. So issues need to be addressed, and the 40 million Irish Americans, as I said, need to hear this, because if not, there will be no place to come home.
It's as Jordan said, might as well stamp all white lives matter on his forehead. That was xenophobic. And you know what are some of the most concerning issues for Irish people right now, what they're talking about? One, the economy, because of the global global hardships we're having regarding the economy. And second is the genocide in Palestine and US's support of this. And they have opened their borders to potential refugees from Palestine and from the Middle East, from places like Yemen, which we are bombing today, as well as potential refugee status for people in the United States. So it is very interesting that it's not an Irish leader. It's not a member from Parliament. It's not an ambassador from Ireland, but Conor McGregor, who wants to come and foment xenophobic rhetoric about Ireland. This isn't stopping with the United States, with Elon Musk promoting issues such as, you know, apartheid's A-OK in South Africa and the farmers are being mistreated, to his support of the German AfD party, which is essentially a neo-Nazi party in Germany, to Conor McGregor being brought to the White House, to ignoring the judge's orders. And this goes to another thing that is happening in our country, which we need to talk about, because all of these things are tied together. None of these things are separate and in a vacuum. So we're also seeing college campuses. I'm sure that most of you guys have heard about Mahmoud Khalil, who was arrested last weekend, taken in the middle of the night. He is an American green card holder who, yes, did help organize pro-Palestine protest, but is an American green card holder with an 8-month pregnant wife who was swept out by ICE, not in uniform. ICE even refused to tell their names. They told his wife, we don't have to tell you our names. We don't have to show you any identification. And they place him in a van and take him away without initially speaking to their lawyer or even clearly explaining where he was going to be. They gave an address. The family showed up there. He was not there. They find out later he had been taken all the way down to Louisiana, where a Trump-friendly judge is known to harshly prosecute or harshly support overarching and overreaching deportation orders. So on top of this, other lead organizers at Columbia are being expelled or choosing to self-deport. And I would also like to state that this weekend, ICE launched a self-deportation portal and is now encouraging legal migrants to choose to self-deport, as well as undocumented migrants. So let's take a look at I believe it's a Twitter post, or X. I like to say Twitter. It's just, it's still Twitter to me. But by Grant DeMiner. Do you have that for us? Last week, I was expelled, and this is an organizer for the Columbia protest, or at Columbia University, the protest at Columbia University. And he is saying last week he was expelled from Columbia for protesting the U.S.-backed genocide in Gaza. As president of SW Columbia Student Workers Union, I was also fired from my job. Trump's administration is pushing their narrative. Here's the real story. Thousands of students across the country have been exercising our First Amendment rights to oppose genocide. Standing against genocide is not just a moral imperative, it is an act of anti-racism and solidarity. Columbia's response, expulsion, suspensions, and retaliation. And I would like to let folks know, not only are they expelling people, they are rescinding degrees that have already been administered to individuals. So they are rescinding degrees that students are already paying for, that they've already gotten, if they participated in protest, which is absolutely insane. Not only are their First Amendment rights being assaulted, but also suspending their degrees they've already gotten. The Donald Trump administration claims the student movement for Palestine is anti-Semitic and violent. They sent the DOJ to crack down on universities, kidnapped Mahmoud Khalil and other students, and are trying to silence us with fear. I am Jewish. I work in Jewish studies. I am not alone in opposing the ongoing genocide. The Jewish people know what genocide is. That's why so many of us, alongside people of all backgrounds, are standing up against what's happening in Palestine. In its proudest moments, the labor movement has stood firmly on the side of the oppressed and therefore on the side of justice. As president of SW Columbia, I had even greater responsibility to stand with my members who were beaten by police just for protesting. Columbia has caved to Trump's demands at every turn. They have brought the NYPD onto campus to brutalize students. Now they've let DHS terrorize students from their own dorms. Our union is here to defend students, student workers, and we won't stand for this blatant repression from Columbia and Trump. Firing and expelling me just before bargaining is a transparent attempt to dodge accountability for endangered students. At the same time, we are facing over $400 million in politically motivated cuts to vital research, and all in service of suppressing pro-Palestine protest. But our local and UAW will fight, so that's another workers' union, will fight to get those cuts reversed and ensure our members can continue the work. The Trump admin crackdown has already failed. Last week, massive protests took place every single day. We are organizing. We are fighting back. This movement isn't going anywhere. Release Mahmoud Khalil. Reinstate all students and workers. As always, hashtag Free Palestine. All right. Thank you, Colin. So they are not only deporting people like Mahmoud Khalil. There is an assault on more than 5 universities that the Trump administration is threatening to revoke their funding, millions of dollars worth of federal funding for these universities if they do not crack down on students, deport them, revoke their studies, revoke their degrees. And also, so it's not only impacting students who are migrants. This is an American citizen, a Jewish American citizen, who's not only been fired from his job, very McCarthyism, this is McCarthyism 2.0, not only fired from his job, but also expelled from the university and from campus. And some people argue, well, you know, they overtook the hall, what they named Heinz Hall, or, you know, they protested out in the quad. And I want to remind people that these are traditions that had happened. This has happened previously during the Vietnam War. This happened climate change protests. There have been a multitude of protests on campus that involved encampments, that involved taking that particular hall, which was a Columbia tradition that Columbia even had on their website as something that they were proud of, is students taking this hall. So these are things that has happened on this campus in perpetuity over the last 50 years. And they're one thing that the University at Columbia claimed to be proud of, and that was their support of civil disobedience, civil First Amendment rights, civil protest regarding human rights violations. But when it comes to Israel, when it comes to the United States support of Israel, that's apparently a red line. You can't protest the U.S. supporting war crimes by sending billions in weapons to Israel for them to carry out a massive onslaught on Gaza. Let's take a look. A second student was also arrested. We have an article on that as well from the BBC. U.S. arrests second pro-Palestinian Columbian University protester. U.S. immigration authorities have announced the arrest of a second activist who participated in pro-Palestinian protests last spring at Columbia University in New York City. Lakwa Cordia, who is Palestinian and from the West Bank, was arrested in New Jersey, the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, said in a statement on Friday. The statement said another student, Rajani Sarvasani, who has Indian citizenship, chose to self-deport by leaving the U.S. earlier this week. Following the arrest of Columbus campus activist Mahmoud Khalil, who was detained on Saturday in New York before being flown to jail in Louisiana, the DHS statement said that Ms. Cordia had overstayed her visa, which had been terminated in 2022 for lack of attendance. It did not say whether she had been attending Columbia or another institution. She had previously been arrested April 2024 for taking part in protest at Columbia University, according to DHS. Ms. Senravisan, a doctorate student at urban planning at Columbia University, had her visa revoked on March 5th. It's a privilege to be granted a visa to live and study in the United States of America, said Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in a statement. When you advocate for violence and terrorism, that privilege should be revoked, and you should not be in this country. So I want to make it clear, and we can close this out. I want to make it clear that when they are saying violence and terrorism, one of the things that they're classifying as violence is speech. Many Republican pundits, as well as Republican officials right now, have gone on air, have gone on shows, have talked about it in press conferences, decrying that, as well as legislation that was passed by the House about 7 months ago, categorizes any issues with Israel, any protest against Israeli law or Israeli mandates would be considered hate speech. So simply criticizing Israel could be considered hate speech. And that could be potentially considered terror. And that's what they're getting at. Having these protests, speaking out against Israeli and our actions in the Middle East against Palestinians could be considered potentially hate speech and therefore terroristic language or terroristic threatening. So while we've had people like Kristi Noem, for instance, who used to be an advocate for freedom of speech on campus when it came to the KKK marching on Campus Square, is now upset and calls it terrorism when pro-Palestine protesters march, when anti-genocide protesters march. They are not pinpointing specific violence or specific violent acts. They have done nothing to confront what happened at the ACLU when students at the ACLU were attacked by members of the IDF, former members of the IDF, and Israeli students, as well as Zionist students, were attacked on campus at ACLU, or I'm sorry, Israeli students attacked pro-Palestine protesters at ACLU, and that's really one of the only accounts we know of wide sweeping violence at these protests. And I want to remind everyone that most of these protests that happened at Columbia were organized by Jewish students. Jewish students that were much like Grant DeMiner, who worked with organizations like Jewish Voices for Peace. Hundreds of Jewish students participated in these protests under the banner, "Not in Our Name." So to claim that all of these Jewish students are somehow now anti-Semitic and are participating in terroristic activities is insane. But that is what's happening. Overall, with everything that we've covered today, coming from this administration, what we are seeing is the skirting of our First Amendment rights, the skirting of due process. And then that goes on to, what the hell are Democrats doing about any of this? What the hell are they doing about Trump's actions? Over the weekend, Chuck Schumer, Friday, voted to support Trump's spending bill. So we're going to move on and talk about that. There's been huge backlash from what you would consider mainstream Democrats, from people that are typically Democratic Party sycophants, over Chuck Schumer's actions in voting for this spending bill. And what was Chuck Schumer's argument in voting for this? his argument was, it's going to be shitty either way. Basically, I'm paraphrasing here. It's going to be shitty either way. So instead of stopping government funding, instead of standing our ground and fighting for concessions, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and vote for it. Now, it was a 54-46 vote. He pressured 10 Democrats into getting, including him, into getting behind passing this spending bill. And Chuck Schumer has now canceled his book tour, Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning, which of course also, from descriptions of the book, demonized pro-Palestine protesters, but that's a whole other story. And Tom Cotton came out with a statement claiming Democrats are fighting to withhold the paychecks of air traffic controllers, our troops, federal custodial staff. So, and he says they can't be serious. The irony of Tom Cotton talking about how Democrats are fighting to withhold paychecks of air traffic controllers, troops, and federal custodial staff when DOJ and this administration has fired tens of thousands of federal workers, many on probation. So the people that were on probation are people that have mostly been promoted. So folks that are doing a good enough job to be promoted in their position. They fired a litany of air traffic controllers. They fired people that were monitoring our nuclear safety. They fired people from NIH that were monitoring the bird flu. And which, you know, Elon Musk has categorized as a quote unquote mistake. But the insane thing is paychecks are literally being withheld by the GOP right now, by the Trump administration, by cutting tens of thousands of jobs, including VA workers. And we'll get into just a few minutes, the massive protest on the mall. Veterans showed up from all across the country. John Farina from Status Coup was one of the reporters on the ground covering this live, and we have some clips for you from that. But let's take a look at what let's take a look at a clip here we have from CNN from Manu Raju regarding regarding Schumer's decision.
Then the top Democrat in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, going as far as not saying he has confidence in Chuck Schumer. That was a remarkable moment on Friday. Now, we have learned that Schumer and Jeffries did meet behind closed doors yesterday in Brooklyn, trying to get back on the same page. They have huge and consequential fights ahead, but the backlash from the left is real. In fact, Wolf, Chuck Schumer is scheduled to do a book tour in a number of cities on a book that he has authored on anti-Semitism. He has just canceled that book tour, we are learning, because of protests that were scheduled from activist groups who wanted to go after his decision to agree and allow the government funding bill to go forward to avoid a government shutdown. They were furious at his decision to do that. It just shows you the anger on the left and the Democratic Party. Can they get it back together at this key moment when they are essentially leaderless in a lot of ways, and don't have a strategy on how to fight back against Trump and have all this unrest on the Democratic base? That's going to be a big question for Schumer, but interesting that he decided to cancel this event. They're citing security concerns, but there were these large-scale protests, at least some protests scheduled outside these events.
Yeah, certainly that is notable. And it all comes, we should note, as the Democratic Party's favorability rating hit an all-time low, right? What's behind this?
Yeah, this is the lowest in CNN's polling in the last 30 years, a real warning sign for the Democratic Party right now. And it's really driven in large part, not just, as you can see on your screen, that 29% of voters have a favorable view of the Democratic Party. That is among all voters. But when you drill down into the numbers, Pamela and Wolf, the real issue is among Democratic voters themselves. They are starting to lose more and more confidence with their own party. In fact, in that same poll, roughly 61% of Democratic voters view their party favorably. Compared to Republican voters, it's about 78% or so of Republican and Republican-leaning voters view their party favorably. And this shift has been really remarkable since January 2017 until now, double digits in approval rating for the Democratic Party. So that's going to be a big question. And then what are the tactics for Democrats to employ? In that same poll, more Democrats, roughly 3/4 or so, want them to fight to stop the Trump agenda. That was different than 2017. 2017. In fact, in 2017, about 3/4 wanted them to work with Trump, try to find bipartisan deals and the like. But the Democratic base has a different view. They don't believe their party is fighting hard enough. But the question is, they're in the minority. There's only so much they can do. But that's why it goes back to that first point. It was their first piece of leverage to fight back against Trump, to keep the government open. They needed their votes in the Senate to avoid a government shutdown by March 14th. They had essentially no strategy, no plan. They got nothing in return, and that's what's feeding a lot of this dissatisfaction within the Democratic Party among their own voters.
Yeah, well, later in the show, we're going to be talking to Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton. Of course, we'll be asking about all of this. Thank you so much, Mani Raju, for bringing us the latest, and welcome in person to the Situation Room. So rare to have you here in person.
Is it because the House is in recess?
House and Senate, they're on recess, which I'm okay with.
There you go. There you
They're
go.
in recess, so you're allowed to come
Still
to
working
the
hard,
Situation.
though. Still working hard. You're not in recess.
No.
All right. Well,
House and Senate passed that bill. Then they went on recess, of course. But one of the things that Mani Raju talks about here that is that's true is that the Democratic Party is bleeding support. They're bleeding support. 15% of their voter rolls after this last election, they lost 15% of their registered Democratic voter base. Most of those voters, statistics are showing, registered independent. So they're not necessarily fleeing and going to the Republican Party. They've lost faith in the Democratic Party. They're looking for other alternatives. And let's take a look at those. Let's take a look at those approval ratings here, Colin. So as you can see, this is from CNN. A CNN SSRS poll shows 29% approval rating for Democrats. NBC News poll is showing 27% approval rating. And I want to remind people that pre-election, it was already slipping. It's been slipping for a long time. But pre-election approval rating was around 42 to 47%. So these are within people who are considered the Democratic Party base. And let's take a look here at Trump's approval ratings right now within the Republican base. 47% approve. So there has been slipping. There's been slippage because it was up over 60%. Disapproval rating at 51%. So, you know, people aren't loving Trump either, but there's definitely more loyalty among the Republican base, and it's slipping. It's not slipping as drastically or as quickly as the Democratic Party base is. This feeling overall of being pissed off at the Democratic Party's inaction has been long coming. We have had Obama that did the bidding of the Heritage Foundation and privatized our healthcare system under the ACA Act. He's the one who gave, Musk millions to bail him out when Tesla was failing. He is one of the main reasons that Musk is a billionaire and has as much power as he has now, because after the 2008 housing crash, instead of helping the people, Obama gave bailouts to corporations, mega companies, rolled back even further than Bill Clinton had rolled back, stopgaps to protect against monopolization, to protect against corporate hegemony. Democrats have slowly been rolling this back, meaning that most people in the Senate who are representing the people are taking corporate money, are doing the bidding of corporate donors, and they're not really much against this bill. Now, are they? Even ones that necessarily voted against it. So Chuck Schumer is a very convenient rotating villain, just like Kyrsten Sinema in the past, just like Joe Manchin in the past. The Democratic Party always has a convenient rolling villain that they can pin this on, while they virtue signal that they're doing something, while there's just enough Democrats to always vote in favor of the damn Republicans, and they claim that this is a bipartisan effort, while more and more get stripped away from the American people. I would love to play, and I have one clip. We're going to do a couple more clips from the Veterans March in just a little bit, but I do have a clip right now from a pissed off veteran at the Veterans March that I think really encompasses the overall feeling regarding Chuck Schumer's actions in passing this abhorrent spending bill and giving Trump's fascism more room to grow.
It's about the students whose education is being censored, the women whose rights are being taken away, the workers who are being exploited, the immigrants who are being scapegoated, and our marginalized communities who are being brutalized. It's about the journalists and the scientists who are being silenced. It's about every single person in this country who still believes that America is worth fighting for. This is not a fight we can afford to lose. We are not going to wait for the next election. We are not going to wait for the courts to save us. We are taking action now. Starting today, we will be mobilizing in every state, in every district, in every community across this nation. We are building a movement that no politician and no media can ignore. We will make sure that every Republican in Congress knows that their silence is complicity, and that complicity is a death sentence to our democracy. And we will make sure that every Democrat faces a similar reckoning. Because allowing fascism to take hold is just as unacceptable as practicing it. My message to Chuck Schumer, to every Democrat who voted to censure Al Green, and every Democrat who fails to understand what Trump is and validates him by voting for anything, wake the fuck up! 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 Who needs...
Wake the fuck up. I think that perfectly encompasses what everyone is feeling, because as this veteran noted, being complicit to fascism is what the Democratic Party is doing. They are complicit in Trump's fascism with their damn inaction. And we saw at the veterans rally, people were upset with Trump's overreaching executive orders, with the expansion of executive powers, with the power grab by Elon Musk and Doge. But we also saw how upset they were with the Democratic Party's inaction right now, with the passing of the spending bill, with everything else, with Jeffries. If you guys have been following Democratic Party leadership, Hakeem Jeffries has basically said, you know, we're going to wait this out because the way this is going will sweep the midterms in 2026. Well, what happens to us between now and the midterms? Which brings us to a post made today by Matt Stoller about protesting the Democrats. If we could pull that up really quick. Oh, do you have that? Do you have that tweet, Colin? The one Matt Stoller did. So Matt Stoller says, don't protest at Tesla dealerships, which I completely disagree with, but we'll get into that in a second. Protest Dem legislators in Delaware who are about to give Elon Musk $50 billion payday by changing corporate law. The Democratic crisis is that a bunch of Democrats in a blue state are about to enable Elon Musk this week. So Elon Musk is set to get another $50 billion contract for Starlink, which he pushed Verizon out of, claiming that, mine is just cheaper and mine is also more effective. Simply his opinion. No other oversight. Just him taking a contract, which I agree with Matt on the fact that we should also be protesting every single one of our people in federal government. And that's not just Democrats, Republicans, as the tens of thousands of people have been showing up at town halls to the point that Republicans no longer want to do town halls. And Johnson, the leader of the House, is calling for Republicans to avoid doing town halls. But I would say, in my opinion, keep up the boycotts as well, because those are obviously working. Putting financial pressure works. We can't just beg our representatives to do better, but we also can't ignore them. I know that there are some people that say we have to ignore the Dems now, and I'm all for building a third party. I support third parties. I support independent runs. I support moving away from the duopoly that has been crushing us from both political parties that are taking more and more away from workers, more and more away and more out of our pocketbooks to hand to corporations. But at the same time, we have to do if and both. We need to show up. We need to pressure these assholes. We can't wait 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We can't wait. Electoral isn't our only option. We can't wait till the next election cycle. We've already seen what's happened in these first 57 days. It has been absolutely insane. We can't stop worker organizing. We can't stop the boycotts. Those are working. If and all. So even though I agree with Matt Stoller somewhat, I disagree with him that we completely shift our focus. We need to divide and conquer. That's what we need to do. Do all the things. Organize. There's enough of us. There's millions of us. There's more than 500 members of Congress, and that's it. But there's all of us. And the 1% is the 1%. There's the other 99%. The 15% of wealthy is 15%. There's still another 85% of us. We need to start showing up. And the last thing that we'll talk about here is how, of course, mainstream media wants to run cover for Chuck Schumer and paint this in a positive light, what he's done. Let's take a look at Wall Street Journal and their fluff piece about Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer's finest hour. Democrats are furious because he saved them from being responsible for a futile government shutdown. The Democratic left is pounding Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer because he and 9 other colleagues provided the votes to pass a budget to fund the government through September 30th. Welcome, Mr. Schumer, to the Democratic version of stupid feudal government shutdown gestures that former GOP leader Mitch McConnell had to resist when the president wasn't a Republican. Mr. Schumer had, well, hold on, I need to move this over. My camera is right in the way. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that, guys. Let's see. There we go. Mr. Schumer had only bad political opinions after the House GOP stayed united and passed the budget without having to beg House Democrats for votes. If Senate Democrats had filibustered the budget, much of the government would have shut down by their hand. This would have been a gift to President Trump. handing him a foil to change the subject from the dislocations caused by Elon Musk's efforts to shrink the government. But that hasn't stopped House Democrats from the left from making Mr. Schumer public enemy number 3 after Mr. Trump and Musk. There is a deep sense of outrage and betrayal, said Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I think Alex is correct here, just to see Democrats even consider acquiescing to Elon Musk. I think it's a huge slap in the face. Well, there's a lot I disagree with AOC on, but on this point, I will say she's correct. A lot of people are angry. And we saw that this weekend at the Veterans March. People are pissed. People are pissed because the Democrats aren't doing anything. And he's trying to say, oh, the Republican Party faced this when they still passed the government spending, but they didn't have to. That's nonsense. The Wall Street Journal, I'm sure, loves the passing of a bill that gives massive cuts, tax cuts to corporations, while potential massive cuts to things like Medicaid and Medicare. So, which is the next step of this act. So we'll see how that goes. But so far, the spending bill is a disaster and should have been blocked, but wasn't. So that brings us to Social Security. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's been going on with Social Security. And it's not good, folks. We are looking at cuts already that are impacting people. If you can pull up the tweet from Judd Legume, he reported this just today, so this is just breaking. An internal Social Security Administration memo dated March 13th lays out a plan to sabotage the legacy. The memo itself predicts service disruption, operational strain, and budget shortfalls will result. And he lays it all out in a thread here. The memo, authorized by Acting Deputy SSA Commissioner Doris Diaz, purports to be motivated by a desire to mitigate fraud risks. Elon Musk has pushed several false claims about the nature and scope of security fraud. The biggest change contemplated by the memo is to require internet identity proofing for benefit claims made over the phone. When SSA customer is unable to utilize the internet ID proofing, customers will be required to visit a field office to provide in-person identity documentation. Current customers can make claims and verify their identity without using the internet or visiting an SSA office. Fraud is extremely rare because there are many safeguards in place. Because the SSA serves a large population that is either older or disabled, many cannot access the internet. So with this, there are two barriers to being able to apply, and that's one, they have to be able to access the internet, which means that internet blackout areas, which are still a lot of places, a lot of rural places in America still do not have internet access, but disabled or elderly Americans who have trouble traveling actually have to go to a physical office. But let me mind you, with cuts to Social Security, we're looking at potential cuts in offices, which means that they might have to travel miles and miles and towns over to be able to get to an SSA office, a Social Security office, to even be able to file. This is a way in which the government can, and Trump and Musk administration can prevent Americans from even filing for disability or Social Security who are qualified for it. And there's another story that we have coming out from the first Doge hearing, which we could go back to that in a second. I'm sorry, I was just giving a little bit of background there, Colin. But there is a story that we have coming out about a LexisNexis is a business that does internet processing for IDs and has been pushing for a contract, billions of dollars for this contract to be able to do this type of internet processing. And now I'm wondering if they won the bid for this contract. And that is what we are seeing, because the gentleman from the dude from LexisNexis that spoke at the first Doge hearing was essentially doing a marketing push for the privatization of processing of Social Security claims, which is already a problem. Some of it has already been privatized, but they're talking about laying off mass federal workers from the Social Security Administration, then bringing on AI, privatized processing, which means a lot of people are going to be caught up in this trap, similar to what we saw with United Healthcare when they started processing claims, and a third of their claims was denied, many of them illegally, because they were processed through artificial intelligence. This is not good, guys. This is not good. This is a way to create a stopgap, to create a barrier or a boundary from people who need it from getting the Social Security that they have paid into their entire damn life. Let's see. He also notes, under the new system, this would force these populations to visit an office to have their claim processed. The memo estimates it would require 75,000 to 85,000 in-person visits per week. How are you going to cut staff and then expect 75,000 to 85,000 in-person visits per week to SSA offices to implement the policy? SSA offices do not have the resources to handle the influx. No, they don't. In 2003, the most recent data available, there were about 119,128 daily visits on average to SSA offices. So we're talking about a massive increase, nearly doubled. 85K more weekly visits would be about a 14% increase. The wait time, well, 14%, I'm sorry, not doubled. The wait time for SSA appointment, even before these changes, were about a month. And if I can remind people to file for disability, it can take a year, 2 years. Sometimes people, will wait to have their disability approved with doctor's approvals. The scrutiny is already intense for these programs, especially for disability benefits. The memo anticipates creating a huge surge in demand for in-person appointments at the SSA as the SSA slashes staff and closes office. The SSA, pushed by Doge, is planning to cut 12% of its staff and is shutting down dozens of offices. An SSA source said that there are no significant concerns about fraud at the intake because multiple layers of ID verification take place before a claim is approved. The source said they believe the new steps are an effort to create additional hurdles to filing claims and overwhelm the system, as I was mentioning before. The combination of fewer workers, fewer offices, and massive increase to the demand for in-person services could sabotage the Social Security system, denying many Americans the benefit they are due. The memo predicts service disruption, operational strain, and budget shortfalls. Great reporting by Judd Legume and independent journalists. And all of that is accurate. This is a barrier set up to prevent people from getting the Social Security benefits and disability benefits that they have paid in for their entire lives. In order to anticipate the millions in cuts that they have to offices, to Social Security itself, as well as to employees. And this is an effort, in essence, to shift that money to billionaires like Elon Musk by the way of tax cuts and massive corporate handouts in the form of privatized corporate contracts, like the one with LexisNexis that I was talking about, which, I am curious now if that is who will be doing this ID processing that they pitched to Doge just 2 weeks ago. which we have already been looking into here. And I've been working on a piece for that for about a week and a half. So let's take a look. We've got one more article that I wanted to share with you that is, or two more. This article is about a man. So not only are they doing what Judd reported, which is cutting offices, forcing people to go in person, but they're doing AI scrubbing to determine if there's any of these people that they're claiming there's millions of dead Americans that are receiving Social Security, which is completely false. And I'll show you why that's false right after we talk about this. But Judd also, a man in Seattle was also, his Social Security was cut off with the claim that he was dead. Can we pull that up really quick, Colin? So here's a dead person on Social Security in Seattle with plenty to say. And this is the Seattle Times. DOJ has 10 staffers at Social Security, at the Social Security Administration to quote unquote hunt for dead people. I wonder how many of those are Elon Musk's minions that he's brought on. The headlines read this past week: I found a dead person on Social Security right here in Seattle on Capitol Hill. Of course, the circumstances of Ned Johnson's death were completely the opposite of what Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency had claimed. You wake up one day and you discover you're dead, Johnson told me. It's been truly surreal. That's the biggest difference. My deceased guy turns out to be very much alive. Musk is contending that hordes of dead people are listed as alive in the Social Security databases and fraudulently still drawing benefits, which the Social Security director disputes. Johnson, 82, is still kicking. Yet sometime last month, someone or something led Social Security to tag both him as dead and start clawing back his benefits. Johnson's strange trip through the netherworld began in February when a letter from his bank arrived addressed to his wife, Pam. We recently received notification of Leonard A. Johnson passing, it began. We offer our sincerest condolences. At first, she figured it was a scam. Her husband, after all, was sitting right there, but the bank got the point. We know this is a difficult time. We're here to help, the bank wrote. We received a request from Social Security Administration to return benefits paid to Leonard A. Johnson's account after their passing. There's nothing you need to do. We've deducted the funds from Leonard A. Johnson's account. Uh-oh. It itemized how $5,201 had been stricken from their bank account on the grounds that Ned wasn't justified to get those funds because he was already dead. That was for payments he'd received in December and January. Ned found that his February Social Security check had been paid. He's yet to receive his March check. His Medicare insurance had been canceled. So they also canceled his Medicare. He also learned that when you die, your credit score gets marked as deceased. Do not issue credit card, which makes it tough to get a loan. The good news is I don't think it can go any lower than that, he said cheerfully. He called the bank first, and they sent an electronic notification that they had been triggered on February 18th, that he had died back in November. But I'm on the phone with you right now, he told them. Also, what did I die of? Take it up with Social Security, they said. So, what followed was nearly 3-week battle to resurrect himself. He called Social Security 2 or more 3 times a day for 2 weeks, with each call put on hold and eventually disconnected. Finally, someone answered and gave him an appointment for March 13th. Then they got a call delaying that to March 24th. In a huff, he went into the office on the 9th floor of the Henry Jackson Federal Building downtown. It's one of the buildings proposed to be closed under the AP, what the AP called a frenetic error riddled push by Elon Musk budget cutting advisors. It was like a Depression era scene, he said, with 50 deep jockeying for attention of 2 tellers, only 2 tellers there. The employees were kind but beleaguered. They are also understaffed down there, he said. They think the office is about to be closed down, and we don't know where they're going to go. It feels like the agency is being gutted. After waiting for hours, Johnson admits he jumped the line. I saw an opening. I kind of rushed up and I told them I was listed as dead. That seemed to get their attention. Once in front of a human, Johnson said he was able to quickly prove he was alive using his passport and his gift of gab. They pledged to fix the predicament, and on Thursday this past week, the bank called to say they had returned the deducted deposits to his account. As of Friday morning, he hadn't received February-March benefits payments. Okay. I think that's good, Colin. Thank you. So, Mr. Johnson was deemed dead. That's what we're getting with these AI that they're using to scrape this data to determine whether or not people are alive or dead. And it's a huge problem. And what we learned, and I'll just review it with you guys really quickly. There are not millions of dead people listed. There is less than 1% of quote unquote erroneous payments by the Social Security Department, most of which, as you just saw, are repaid because they literally took the money out of Johnson's bank account, right? That's what they do when there's erroneous payments. They just take it from people. So most of it is either voluntarily paid back or is deducted from people's payments. Every year, so many people die. Every year, the people that actually die, this is what happens. The money comes out of their bank account once they're declared dead. But what is so crazy here is they cut off his Medicaid too, because the Social Security Department erroneously labeled him dead. So not only did he lose his Medicare benefits, but he also lost his Social Security, which was pulled out of his bank account. So imagine just having that ripped out of your bank account. Dude wasn't dead. Now imagine saying that there's this many dead people on the rolls and this isn't getting paid back, and that's just not true. You just saw in process what happens when somebody actually passes away. But what is happening instead of family reporting, instead of agencies reporting and states reporting when people die, which is how it works, the Social Security Administration is now scrubbing data to declare people dead without that additional paperwork. And that's extraordinarily problematic. I don't know how much is going to balloon past this one guy, how many other people this has happened to, but it is extraordinarily alarming. And the irony that it goes against everything that they were claiming about dead people receiving their benefits and this mass amount of fraud, because we see the process of what happens. Right now, the file that they have that they're claiming are tons of dead people aren't. All that it is a file from where anyone born before 1921, I believe, is still listed without a death date. And so that is lots of people. But those death dates are noted within the states. So it's at a state clerical level, at the state courthouses, where this information in county clerk's offices is where this information lives. The only reason it wasn't updated on this particular death file was because it would cost Americans $9 million to update this. They would have to send out people to offices all across the country, and it has no impact. It does nothing. It would just be literally a waste of government funds to do this. So they're using a file that is a death file that doesn't count people that were born before 1921. It doesn't show their death date, and claiming that it's a bunch of people receiving benefits, which is not factually based whatsoever. And now apparently they're using AI to scrape for people being dead and knocking them off Social Security, which is extraordinarily problematic. And I'm saying they're potentially using AI. I'm drawing that inference because Elon Musk has said in a recent press conference that they were going to start using AI through Doge to scrape for people who died. So considering that this happened around the same time, I can't say 100% that that's what happened, but it's extraordinarily likely. Either way, this guy was noted as dead. He's not. They took his money from him out of his bank account, knocked him off Medicaid, and didn't send him his latest check. So that's where we're at. And if we see a lot more of this, we're going to see people out on the streets. That coupled with you have to go into the office, even if you're disabled, even if you can't, you have to find some internet access to be able to file online, even though that's something that is difficult for, you know, elderly people. Let's say you have eyesight problems. Let's say you have a disability. Let's say, you know, it's just hard for you to navigate on a computer because of where you're at in life right now. You have to get on the internet and do this. They're no longer doing phone calls. That's extraordinarily problematic too. Oh, okay. That brings us to two more things. That's depressing enough, right? We see Democratic Party in action. I haven't heard the Democrats talking about any of these people. I don't know why Hakeem Jeffries isn't bringing this guy out to talk about what just happened to him. That's what the Democratic Party should be doing. Where's Ro Khanna? Where is Pramila Jayapal, which is the district where this happened? Helping this guy. So we're going to move on to the veterans rally. Thousands of people showed up. Speaking of actions, John Farina was on the ground for Status Coup News, and people came in from California, New York, the Midwest. They bust in. There were thousands of veterans there. There were thousands of people protesting. Of course, we're already hearing from, you know, Fox News that it was paid protesters or what. No. These are people that are angry. These are people that are validly pissed off about what is happening right now. We are seeing veterans getting pulled out of town hall meetings for espousing their frustrations and anger with their federal representatives, with their House representatives. Let's take a look at a clip from this march so we can hear directly from some of the people that were there.
We see what happens when those warnings go unheeded. We are watching our country be taken from us in real time. And let's be clear about what Donald Trump has done. He has weaponized the Department of Justice to attack his political opponents while pardoning criminals who serve his agenda. He has purged government agencies of experts and installed loyalists who will carry out his orders, no matter how illegal or dangerous. He has shut down investigations into his own corruption while launching baseless attacks against those who dare to expose him. He has betrayed our allies, weakened our global standing, and given our enemies everything they could have ever hoped for. And he has done all of this with the support of his enablers in Congress. Men and women who took an oath to the Constitution, but who now submit to a man who has spent his entire life serving only himself. Right now, at this very moment, there are Republicans in Congress who know what Donald Trump is. They know he's a danger to this nation. They know he is unfit to serve. They know he is a fraud, a criminal, and a coward. And yet, they stay silent. They stay silent because they fear his followers. They stay silent because they fear him. They stay silent because they've convinced themselves that someone else is going to fix this. But history doesn't bend towards justice on its own. It bends because people like us demand it. Because we make it so. So today, we send this message to every Republican in Congress who still believes in the rule of law. Stand the fuck up!
So we heard a little bit from him earlier. We also heard, and please go check out our live stream. We also have one more clip, I believe. Do we have one more clip, Colin? From a couple people we'd spoken to as well.
Doesn't exactly always fit my problems in my life, but it does affect my battle buddies and the people that I served with. And I will not stand for that type of behavior, especially from our government. So I'm going to use my constitutional rights to be able to say fuck that. That's why I'm here.
And, you know, Trump and Republicans and MAGA, they always claim that they're the party of the veterans, party of the military. They support the veterans. Do you think it was all...
That man is a draft dodger. His whole family has never served. So no, I don't believe that that man gives a damn about the military or any veterans. He's been clear how he feels about the veterans.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Never will. He doesn't care about any of us. He's made that very clear. I don't care about you, I just care about your vote. That says it all to me.
Right.
So I don't need nothing from that man. It's done.
And I want to get your thoughts on, you know, Chuck Schumer.
Fuck Chuck
yeah, what he did with the bill.
Once you bend that knee, you're done. I'm done.
And overwhelmingly this weekend, what John Farina recorded, and from the folks that he spoke to on the ground, and I suggest people go and watch this whole rally. There's a lot more to it. Was both parties have let us down. Both parties need to wake the fuck up. The people need to organize, and it's going to take us to do it together through boycotts, through marches, through pressure on our representatives, through strikes, through worker action. I know that they had some folks from unions there as well speaking. And so the overwhelming message is this fuckery is bipartisan. It is bipartisan. Both parties have screwed us over, and it is time to wake the fuck up. That was the message. It is time to stop letting the encroachment and creeping fascism that has now turned into full-blown fascism that has been enabled and buttressed by both parties over the last 30 years. People are sick of it. They talk about their benefits being cut. They talk about VA offices being gutted. They talk about Medicare and Medicaid being cut, disability being cut. And they also talk about how the Democratic Party is not doing anything to stop it. And in that way, they are complacent with the fascism. And that was a clear message. The clear message was an indictment of our entire political system, of this oligarchy that we are under, the corporations of America, just like Jordan always talks about. That's what we're fighting. This is a class war. And the veterans are angry too. So a lot of these are not Democrats. There were people here at this rally that were also Republicans. So there are people that are angry from both parties, that are angry at both parties in action. They're pissed off at the corporations. They're tired of the exploitation, and they're ready for us to stand up and do something. We want to cover a lot more of these kinds of events. We are one of the few that go on the ground, that are there, that are covering these events. We're trying to hire a new full-time journalist on the ground. That's what Jordan's doing this week. That's why he's out today. He's doing interviews for a full-time on the ground field reporter so that we can give some help to John Farina, Tina Desiree Berg, and other contributors who do amazing work. But it's expensive. It's expensive to send people to these rallies. It was expensive to send John Farina on the ground in DC. It could cost $2,500, $3,000, $3,500 just for cheap hotel rooms and getting our equipment down there and being able to do everything that we need to do. So if you could, please give to statuscoup.com/join. We got 3,000 new subscribers this weekend. From people watching this rally, people getting excited, seeing the organizing on the ground. And it's so important that people see this organizing, that people see this happening, that people know what's being said. We also go on the ground and we talk to people impacted. We were in California. Lithium ion battery plant exploded a month ago. Tina Desiree Berg was on the ground talking to people there about how it is poisoning the soil, how it is poisoning the bread bowl of America, the salad bowl, of America, where a lot of our fruits and vegetables are grown, strawberries, romaine lettuce, blackberries, blueberries. We covered East Palestine for 2 years, and we have still been covering it. Jordan was on the ground for the Dakota Access Pipeline years ago. He's been covering Flint the entire time. We not only cover it then, we stay on it, and we keep the coverage up, and we try not to leave these places behind. But we need more people. As things get crazier, we need to hear from the voice of the people being impacted on the ground. So if you could, please, $5 a month, if you can, will help to keep us sustained. www.statuscoup.com/join. That's the best place to give. You can become a member on YouTube, and that would be great. The powers that be at Google keep some of that, but if you go to statuscoup.com/join, that all goes to us, and that's a great way to support our channel. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification button. You guys know all that jazz, and just share it out as well. That also helps. But yeah, if you can donate, help us to be able to afford this new journalist. It's going to be a game changer for Status Coup as we're growing, and we're almost at 500,000 subscribers now. So if there's anyone new, please subscribe. We are an equal opportunity. We equally opportunity criticize both parties. We try to bring you guys the truth every day, and don't see a lot of that. You gotta sift through and find, one or another. And we need more on the ground reporting so we can hear directly from people. That brings us to our very last story of the day to wrap up. And this is actually a big one. Over the weekend, last night and Saturday, Trump bombed several locations in Yemen. He bombed several locations in Yemen, claiming that they are targeting. There was a Pentagon briefing just before we went live today, claiming that they are targeting Houthi terrorists who Biden had removed from the terrorist list, which one of Trump's first executive orders was to put them back on to the terrorist list. Not only are they bombing Yemen, but also stoking war with Iran. The Pentagon spokesperson, Sean Parnell, and Lieutenant General Alex Grinakovic were the ones who spoke today at the Pentagon hearing, or the Pentagon presser, and both of them claimed that they would not discount boots on the ground potentially, but that they said that they were, even though they claimed that this was going to be the most transparent, how exactly did they say that? The most transparent Pentagon in U.S. history. Most of the questions they were unwilling to answer because of national security, quote unquote, reasons. They say that this is to prevent attacks on ships, to hit the infrastructure of the Houthis. However, as we know, Houthis are some of the resistance against the genocide in Gaza as well. So this definitely has ties to Israel and to Israel's violence in Palestine as well. One of the things that Parnell said today that was very alarming is, we will use overwhelming lethal force until we have achieved our objective. Overwhelming lethal force. So shock and awe, I guess. And this language sounds very similar to what comes from the Likud party, individuals like Ben Gvir and Bibi Netanyahu, to me. Overwhelming lethal force. Now, I remember, during the election, Kamala claimed that we would have the most lethal military in U.S. history. So I don't know how much different it would have been if she was in office, but I do know for a fact that this is happening now, and there is no pushback. I have not seen any pushback from Democratic Party representatives. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe something will happen, but so far, not so much. And so far, the anti-war president is already doing drone strikes 1 month into his presidency. He ran on a platform of anti-war. already doing drone strikes and fomenting war with Iran. Let's take a look at Trump's statement here, and then we'll show the article in just a minute, Colin. Truth Social. This is how we're doing presidential statements now, apparently, but let's read what he's got to say. Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen who are hated by the Yemeni people, all emanate from and are created by Iran. Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that that force will stop there. Iran has the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they lost control, but they haven't lost control. They're dictating every move, giving them the weapons, supplying them with money and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called quote-unquote intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran, and Iran will be responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire. So he is claiming that anything that happens that the Houthis do from here on out will be blamed directly on the Iranian government. Now, there probably are ties between the Houthis and Iran. We do know that. However, saying this is only a dog hairs away from declaring war on Iran, saying that any action that the Houthi military takes or the Houthi organization takes will be directly tied to Iran, and Iran will be directly responsible for any actions carried out by the Houthis. What that means, we don't know. But what it sounds like is fomenting escalation toward Iran for war. And that's terrifying. That's scary. And I'm not just saying this as an Iranian American. This is supposed to be an anti-war president. That's what he ran on. Now, I didn't believe that shit for a hot minute. Most of you guys probably didn't believe that either. But what we are seeing is an escalation of war toward Iran. We are seeing carpet bombing already. We are seeing strikes, and they're saying what they struck was, I think 32 people have been killed, I believe, but they're saying that they were targeted military strikes. We're still getting information on exactly what was hit, where, how, why. But according to the Pentagon today, it was targeted hits against their military infrastructure of the Houthis, weapons depot, places where the Houthis organized. But what is unclear is what are the next steps if there's any kind of retaliation. They're saying even shots fired in defense, that this will be blamed on Iran. So anything that they do, Iran gets pegged on them. This is a sign that there's escalation toward war with Iran. We don't know what it means, but it is not good. This disappearing people, skirting judicial orders, cracking down on First Amendment rights. So, if someone now protests bombing in Yemen, will they be classified as terrorists because they're protesting the bombing in Yemen? And a lot of this is to do the bidding of AIPAC, Adelson, Miriam Adelson, who donated to Trump's campaign, who is a rampant Zionist. A lot of their calls regarding anti-Semitism makes anti-Semitism worse for the Jewish people, which anti-Semitism is real and is a real problem, but it is not tied to anti-genocide protests. So fomenting war with Iran, disappearing people, disappearing migrants, no oversight, skirting judges' orders, and the Democratic Party isn't doing a damn thing. I think that basically sums up today. It was a big day. A lot happened. Part of what this administration is doing, as Steve Bannon has said, is overwhelming us with a constant bombardment of changes of their fascist aims. They're throwing tons of spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. And what sticks is dangerous. And there is no opposition party. We only have controlled opposition. So it's going to take us to stand up. We're not in a good place, guys. Not only are we having massive economic impacts, we're going to see things from the tariffs, things coming down the pike, but we're also potentially looking at war. The anti-war president isn't so much anti-war, even if he is fighting for a ceasefire, or not fighting for, but trying to pressure a ceasefire for Ukraine, which sounds great. He's shifting priorities to supporting Israel's genocide and Israel's onslaught in the Middle East and doing the bidding there. So do we have any super chats today, Colin?
What was that?
Oh, did we have any super chats by chance?
Yes, we do. I'll pull them up screen.
Alrighty. Bear became a member. Thank you so much, Bear. Nice to have you on board in the coup community. Gina Wang became a member. Welcome, Gina. Dorothy Pernetti became a member. Thank you so much, Dorothy. Judy BMR became a member. Thank you so much, Judy. This is awesome. Kat Negrita. Oh, she's been a member for 6 months. That's amazing. Thank you, Status Coup. Support #Status Coup. Thank you so much, Kat. It's good to see you. Nikki Pribel became a member. Welcome, Nikki. Catherine Blakely became a member as well. Thanks so much for joining the Status Coup community. Byron Davis, another member. This is awesome. Galactic Moth. The oligarchy is the deep state. Exactly. Exactly. And it's so strange to hear the Trump administration always talking about the deep state when a billionaire is literally running roughshod, the richest man in the world, over everything. But don't be fooled, because Democrats are looking for the quote unquote good billionaires to do the same thing for them. They play for the same team. And that is not to give a false equivalency or to undermine the fascism that is happening now, but we have to understand how the mechanisms work together that have gotten us here and that are buttressing Trump's administration. It didn't start in a vacuum, and it didn't start January 20th. RG Toro is that Grosso? Super sticker. Thank you so much.
That is all of them. Actually, we also got several members on the website. Let me give a shout out to those as well. This is through statuscoup.com/join. And so today we had new members: Wesley, Jack, Holly, Ivy, Billy, Daniel, Cindy, Catherine, Alan, Mim, and Rebecca joined today. So thanks a lot for joining at statuscoup.com/join.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for supporting independent journalism. Thank you guys for joining today. Everyone in the chat, our regulars, our moderators, all the new folks that joined us. Please stay tuned. We'll have more news this week, and I'm sure more on the ground coverage. And be sure you go and check out the Veterans March from this weekend, covered by John Farina. Thank you guys so much. Have a great night.